A dedicated countertop in your kitchen with supplies and flowers nearby makes things more efficient and fun when bread making. As you gain experience with your bread making, you will decide what container you would like to use. I like using this 2-gallon quart or 2-gallon plastic container. It has a lid, and I can start from the very beginning with it and I end with it, so I only have one dirty dish at the end of the whole process. This is my beautiful sourdough starter. I've had it for about 2 years and it looks very active today. I think it wants to make some bread. I think the scariest thing for people and their sourdough start is they can't tell when or if their start is bad. If you feed it regularly, at least every week or perhaps every 2 weeks, it should be fine. Sometimes you'll see a liquid on top. That's called hooch. That used to be an illicit whiskey. Now, if you want to drink it, you can if you want, but I hear it's pretty potent. Some people say to pour it off the top. I just stir it right back in. It helps in the fermentation process. The other thing you can do is smell it. If it smells nice and sour, then it's fine. If it has a horrible sour smell, then it has gone bad. So don't be afraid. This bread doesn't require a whole lot of equipment, but I do want to stress and recommend that you have a kitchen scale. Some people still like to use measuring cups, but depending on how your flour is stored, it could be very inaccurate using measuring cups for your ingredients. Your flour could be densely packed or over fluffy, so the more accurate way is with a gram scale. We start the leavening batter with the following ingredients: 100 grams of the sourdough starter. Next is 50 grams of dechlorinated water. The way you make dechlorinated water is by getting tap water. Ashland water is great. And letting it sit for 24 hours in a clear bottle. I just try to remember to refill it every time I make bread. That way, in a few days when I'm ready to make the bread, it's already dechlorinated. So you don't have to wait the 24 hours. Just keep it prepared at all times. So you've done 100 grams of sourdough start, 50 grams of dechlorinated water, and now we're going to do 50 grams of flour. And I think what I'm going to do here is 25 grams of organic white flour and 25 grams of wheat flour. So if you notice here, what we've done is we've put in 100 grams of sourdough starter, and we have equaled the amounts of ingredients to the sourdough starter with water and flour. And I'm telling you this because you could put in as much flour ingredients that you want, the different types of flours that you want, as long as it equals 50% water, 50% of any kind of flour to make the 100 grams of ingredients to add to your 100 grams of sourdough start. So once my leavening ingredients are in my bucket, I try to take this moment to feed my sourdough start. I took 100 grams out of my sourdough start, and now I want to add 100 grams back in. And so I will do 50 grams of water and 50 grams of whatever type of flour that I want to feed it. Just remember, anything you take out of your sourdough start, you want to put the equal amount of ingredients of water and flour back into it so that they will have something to eat while you're waiting to make your next loaf of bread. Once all your ingredients are added, you want to stir it up nice and vigorously, and just make sure that you get all the flour hydrated. We're going to set our sourdough starter aside, and now we're going to mix up our leavening batter. And again, you want to make sure you get all your flour hydrated. The purpose of this is to have freshly fed sourdough starter, and it becomes very active. And when the yeast becomes very active, it's kind of like they have this momentum. They get really super hungry and they want more. I imagine it to be like a first course or an hors d'oeuvre. At this point, you got about 8 to 10 hours to do something, and you can go to work, or if it's Saturday, you can go on a hike, perhaps do some gardening or clean the house, whatever you want to do. But I'll see you in about 10 hours. Okay, so we've had a great day. It's been a little over 11 hours since I did this, and these guys are having a party. They're hungry, they're excited, and we're going to give them some more food. So this starts the beginning of the actual bread making. So we're doing 75% hydration, water to flour. That means we're going to use 1,000 grams of flour for 2 500-gram loaves and 750 grams of water to make it a 75% hydration. For this batch, I'm going to use 500 grams of organic white flour, 300 grams of whole wheat flour, 150 grams of spelt, and 50 grams of rye. I really love the rye. It gives it a really nice flavor. It absorbs water a little better than some of the other flours, and it just it gives it a little bit of a density, which I really like. I really want to encourage folks to experiment with different types of flours. You'll find some that are very water absorbent, some that are very sticky, some that are very flavorful, but you'll find a combination that you really, really like. You're going to get your 725 grams of water in here, and you're going to try to mix it up as best you can to hydrate it. It's pretty sticky right now, but that's the way it's supposed to be. It's a very wet bread. I've heard this called a rough dough. It's just going to look really funky and bumpy and sticky, and that's the way it's supposed to be. It's got lots of water, but as time goes on, you will see the difference that the dough makes as you work it. We're going to let this dough sit for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to come back and add the rest of the water and some salt. Salt sometimes inhibits the yeast and the good bacteria. So you want to give it a chance to get some momentum going before you add that salt. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes, and now I'm going to add the salt. For the salt, I have found that a very coarse sea salt works nicely. You can tell when you're mixing the bread if it has dissolved or not. We're going to put in, let's see, 26 grams of salt. This is a personal preference. Some people like 20, some people like 30. You will figure it out as you experiment with this recipe. The next ingredient you will add will be the remaining 25 grams of dechlorinated water. And now comes the very fun part. We're going to get our hands in there and we're going to squish and twist. Squish and twist. You're going to fold and stretch, But the squishing and the twisting is getting that salt dissolved. That is the purpose of this first knead. And this will probably go on for about 3 or 4 minutes to get this done. You will be able to tell when the salt is dissolved, and the bread will start to feel just a little smoother. I'll be back in about 15 minutes and we will start doing some stretching and folding. It's a really fast 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so it has been about 15 minutes and we're gonna do our first stretch and fold, okay? So let me get you down here. See if I can get you right where you can see it good. So that's what it looks like. It's still a little bumpy. It's not really smooth yet. So what I'm gonna do is stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. You will do this 4 times in the next hour, every 15 to 20 minutes. And what you're really doing is just imagine the gluten's just kind of all chaotic right now, but as you stretch and fold, you're lining them up and they become more like soldiers where they're just holding the dough together and making it very elastic and strong. And this is important because when the yeast produce the gas, you don't want the dough to pop as the gas pockets form. This process makes the dough rise. Okay, so I'm back and I've done the stretch and fold 4 times, or actually this is the 4th time. So the bread is feeling pretty good. And so, I don't know if you can see this, but it's really soft and smooth and it's not sticking at all. This is how we want it. You can pull it up and it looks nice and it's just wonderful. You'll be able to tell it's just a nice, better than Play-Doh kind of feel. So this will be the last time I do this. And we'll take a look at it and then I'm going to hit the sack. And in the morning, we'll see how much it rises. It's really good. It's a nice little ball. Love it. Okay. So we'll just let it sit at night tonight and you can kind of see where it is in the bucket here. And I have a feeling it'll be about up to here tomorrow morning. So we'll check it out. Good morning. So we've got our little party was had last night. And so when I went to bed last night, we had about that much dough and it's risen. So this is a first rise. And I don't know if you can see all those little bubbles in there. That is what these guys do. So at this point, you're going to want to punch it down and release all those gas bubbles so that you can let it rise again. This recipe fits right into my life. And you will find a recipe that fits into yours. There are thousands of recipes. This is just the one that I like, my husband likes, and and it works for us. So now it's about half the size again. See that? Okay, so I'll see you after work. I'm late, so I got to get going. All right, bye. So check this out. While I was at work, these babies were partying all day, like good babies do. But it's Friday night, and my husband and I had quite a long week, so I'm going to just stick this in the fridge tonight. I could make a loaf tonight, but I'm going to stick it in the fridge, and I'm going to have a fresh loaf of bread for us to have for breakfast tomorrow morning on Saturday night. Good morning. It's Saturday morning, and we are ready for a fresh loaf of bread. So it looks like it's been fermenting a little bit more in the fridge, and it will do that. But in the fridge, in cooler weather, the fermenting process does slow down a bit. The warmer weather, it speeds up. And I know the film is on fast forward, but I'm trying to gently pull it from the side of the bucket. And then I'm going to get my hand in there, and I'm just going to pull this dough right out of the bucket. Now that our kids are gone, it's just my husband and I, so we will make 2 loaves out of this dough. And if you wanted, though, you could make 1 giant loaf. Either way, it works out great. So another good tool to have is a straight edge that has a dull edge, so you don't cut your countertops, to divide your bread in half. I just eyeball it. And I'm going to take 1/2 and put it back in the bucket. It's going to go back in the fridge, and would use the other half for the loaf for today. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the sides of the dough and I'm pushing it down towards the bottom. And what I'm really trying to do here is to create a nice, tight retention on top. So today I'm going to be baking this loaf in a Dutch oven. And for a Dutch oven, I like to use parchment paper because I don't want it to stick. I want you to know that you can also use that spray butter. I've used that before and it works really well. But it does add a bit of a buttery taste at the bottom part of the crust. You want to get a nice sharp knife for scoring. And there's different ways to score it. This is one of my favorite ways, but you can do like checker patterns or a star pattern, whatever you like. I've done them all. I enjoy having different patterns on my bread. My Dutch oven is in the oven, and the oven is preheated to 500 degrees. So before putting it in the oven, you want to prepare yourself with about 1 ounce of water. Little teacup works good. Make sure you have your handy hot pads. Take the lid off the Dutch oven that's been heating up in your oven. And the nice thing too about the parchment paper is you can use it like handles to get it into the Dutch oven. Plop that in, and very quickly, with your lid in hand with the hot pad and the ounce of water, just pour it right in the pan and quickly put that lid on. The point to that is you're trying to capture the steam so you can get a nice hard crust, nice chewy, crunchy crust. Now I'm going to turn down the oven to 475 from 500, and I'm going to set the timer for 30 minutes. Okay, so it's been a luxurious 30 minutes, and now what I'm going to do is take the top off of the Dutch oven, and I'm going to bring the rack up to the next level to get that bottom off of the heat. My oven is gas and it has heat at the bottom, and I don't like the crust to be too crunchy on the bottom or too chewy, hard on the bottom. So I rise it up a bit, and then I'm going to set the timer for 17 minutes, and I'm going to put the temperature down to 450. Again, it's 17 minutes at 450. Okay, so the timer just went off, and my husband and my dog are really ready for some bread right now. So I'm going to be grabbing it out of the oven, and let's take a look and see how this bread looks. And ta-da! Here it is. I never get tired of this part. It smells wonderful in here. The bread looks beautiful. It's nice and hard crust on the top and the bottom. It kind of sounds hollow. And although I have before, I really shouldn't cut into this. It's still cooking inside for about 30 minutes. Then we can cut into it and see how it looks. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Time to cut into this baby and see how it looks. That's gorgeous. It's risen very nicely. It smells good. It has a nice soft crumb, few holes, but you can actually use this for a sandwich and things won't fall through. We're gonna have some fun. Just a quick update. It's 7 days later, and I finally baked the second loaf last night. It's Saturday morning this morning, and last night my husband and I came home and baked a loaf of bread. And I just wanted to let folks know that the second loaf is always a little more sour, and the longer it sits in the fridge, the more sour it is. And this loaf is super sour. It smells really good. So I just want to encourage folks to not panic if you can't get to your second loaf, because the longer it waits, the more sour it is. I wouldn't go much past 8 days, because then it gets a little harder to handle. So I'm going to take some of these Rainier cherries that I canned earlier this summer. They're almond vanilla cherries, and I'm going to have myself some breakfast. Bon appetit.